And with us now in the studio is Dr. Cynthia Bulik, who is the director of the Eating Disorders Program at the University of North Carolina. And you're the author of this new study called Body Image in Women 50 and Over, which has some pretty surprising results. It came up in our news meeting yesterday, and a collective gasp came across the newsroom as we learned, what is it, some 62% of women over the age of 50 say their weight or shape negatively impacts their life. Were you surprised by that finding?
You know, I wasn't, but I think the world will be. You know, there's this stereotype that eating disorders affect mainly adolescent and young adult women, but that's not what I've been hearing on the street, and that's not what we've been seeing in the clinic, and these numbers bear that out.
Why are they increasing?
Why are they increasing? I think there is such pressure on older women to not look like they're becoming older. Everything is about looking younger, trying to stay thin and attractive, whether that means surgery or cosmetics or whatever. The pressure to not age is so strong. And that leads them down the path of unhealthy eating and diet behaviors.
Is it something, though, that's starting later in life, or is this a continuation that maybe some of these women have dealt with earlier?
You know, we're seeing three patterns. We're seeing some women who had eating disorders when they were adolescents, got better, recovered, had children, got married, but then they have a relapse later in life. We're seeing some women who have chronic eating disorders and continue to suffer later in life. And then we're seeing this intriguing group who develop eating disorders later in life.
Okay, so is this something that triggers it, or does it begin in adolescence?
Right, not necessarily. You know, we know that all eating disorders have a genetic and a biological component.
Yeah.
But the real question is, what are those triggers that are hitting older women? What we're seeing are things like divorce, this pressure, of course, to not age, children leaving home, loss of a spouse, children coming back when you're not expecting them to. These are all emotional triggers that can trigger eating disorders later in life.
But some of these things have been happening throughout history. This pressure maybe not as much, but people have been getting divorced, people die, kids leave, they come back. Why now?
Well, it's that critical convergence also of that you can't look older. You've got to stay young and fit. There's no niche for a grandma anymore.
I will say, I don't know if you heard this issue in the meeting, but that was really what happened. And I say this very seriously. In the meeting, a lot of us said, you know, we really thought that at 50 we could stop worrying about this and stop constantly feeling like you're inadequate. And it doesn't happen anymore.
It doesn't stop. This seems to be a cradle to grave ball and chain that many women carry around.
How do you change that?
The most important thing is we've got to get ourselves out of this appearance focus. One of the things that I do in the book is I get women to look in the mirror, and instead of looking for flaws and figuring out what's wrong, say something positive about yourself. Not about your appearance, but about some other enduring characteristic that'll be there long after your looks fade.
And what about men? None of this is...
That's the next book. I think you guys are just a little bit behind the eight ball. You'll catch up.
What's interesting about you is you're not only at the Department of Nutrition, but also the Department of Psychiatry.
Right.
You know, so you're combining both aspects of this to understand it.
Exactly, and I think that's really the key, because it's not just about food. Eating disorders are never just about food. It's really about self-esteem, body esteem, and the whole psychology associated with development, as we're seeing across the lifespan.
When you told Charlie men are just a little bit behind here, do you mean they haven't quite caught up to feeling as inadequate? Because that's a good thing if they're a little behind us.
I think what's actually happening...
In feeling inadequate?
Yes, no, because, you know, about women feeling inadequate about their bodies, you were saying men are a little bit behind.
But I mean, we shouldn't feel inadequate. We should...
No, absolutely not. But if men are starting to, then that's another issue.
I think men are being targeted now more. I think we've been targeted a lot by the media, by the fashion industry, to constantly feel like there's something wrong. And now they're realizing that there's a market in you folks as well, and they're starting to pick at you, trying to make you feel a little inadequate too.
I feel fine.
I'm so glad to hear.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Nice to have you here.